right, let's talk about some of the research that's available about sex differences in relationships and attraction. I've already mentioned the problem with creating a false binary potentially by just saying, hey, we got two categories, let's compare them. A lot of research has taken this approach of comparing males to females, but we're probably missing some people because of the emphasis on the binary. All right, so first of all, what are some of the things that have been documented? We do see that there are some differences in terms of what is considered physically attractive. As we've already mentioned, like waist to hip ratio rather than waist to shoulders ratio, depending on if you're talking about a male body or a female body. And that might be related to reproductive potential. Some people have said the reason that that men tend to like women with larger breasts is because maybe they associate that with caring for children, nursing, and so various things, various differences can possibly be explained by reproductive aspects. We do see differences in the age and age differences that will be tolerated for men versus women. So in most countries, older man dating a younger woman, it's not that noteworthy or not as noteworthy unless it's like a huge difference. But then the other way around, older woman with younger man, it's like, what the heck is going on over there? So we do have that general difference. And then sometimes people say, well, that can also be explained in terms of reproductive issues because that older woman, she might be menopausal or perhaps perimenopausal. So if she cannot give that person babies, what is she there for? So those things can have a factor, or just that we value youth. A lot of the current societal and cultural, at least right now in the Western societies, there is still a lot of emphasis on youthful features, having that youthful look. And all the models and the actresses, they are younger and younger, even when they are playing opposite older actors. Now, some other differences in general in relationships. Men tend to prefer physical looks, like they gotta have a hot girlfriend, hot wife. They're more likely to value that. And women are more focused on resources. Not that they're shallow, not that they're gold diggers, but they are more likely to focus on, okay, so can this person provide for me or our potential family? And men, you've probably seen this if you've been paying attention. Men being more likely to emphasize the quantity of relationships, how many experiences, how many relationships they've had, whereas women, it's more about quality, not necessarily needing to have a whole bunch of relationships. And in fact, sometimes they are shamed when they date a lot of people or are known to have had multiple sexual relations and experiences. And so there's a double standard, as we call it. Now, all right, and all of these can be explained by cultural and biological explanations potentially. Now, we also see some sex differences in jealousy, all right? So we know jealousy. You get jealous of your partner, and you're like, hey, are you cheating on me? Are you straying? Are you falling for somebody else? What you been up to? All right, and so we do see that when there is infidelity, cheating, with infidelity, if it's suspected or if it's really known, we do see that women are generally more upset by emotional infidelity. If their partner falls in love with someone else, it's very upsetting, whereas men are way more upset by sexual infidelity. If you sleep with somebody else, they're upset, whereas women, it's like, well, sleeping doesn't matter, the sexual part doesn't matter, but do you love them? Do you love that other person? So women more upset by emotional infidelity, men more upset by sexual infidelity. And how can we explain this? Our evolutionary psychologists, they would focus on, okay, let's think about survival of the species and what might be relevant here. Women can dislike emotional infidelity because it threatens resources. If you're focused on who can take care of my offspring, who can take care of my children, they fall in love with some other woman, they might go and take care of her instead of taking care of your young, taking care of you. Whereas men, why do they care if their their female partner is having sexual relations with somebody else, well, let's think about if there are children involved or there's a potential pregnancy involved. Men can be concerned with paternity uncertainty when they don't know who the father of any potential baby is. So doubts about whether a child is genetically theirs could be at this root of them getting really upset with sexual infidelity. And there could also be some cultural differences too. Just because men are often celebrated more for promiscuity. It's like cool, like, oh yeah. You know, I don't know if the term is still used, but in my days, like you call a guy a stud. Like, oh yeah, he's such a stud. He's had so many girlfriends, he's had so many sexual partners. And then the girl just has like 2 and they're like, oh, you slut. All right, there's definitely, again, that double standard that I mentioned. Women are trained to be communal. They may be more hurt by emotional cheating versus sexual cheating because they're focused on the community and sort of keeping the family together. That sort of concern. And cultural expectations. Many cultures will push women to be chaste and loyal, and that might also have to do with the paternity uncertainty. A woman who is not very sexually driven and very chaste and loyal, you can be more certain that any babies, that's the husband's babies. So men can be more offended by sexual infidelity because of some of these reasons. All right, now, as mentioned, promiscuity differences. Definite differences, and by the way, promiscuity, the official definition, willingness to engage in a casual sexual encounter. All right, so those hooking up sort of situations. And in a classic study, and I always wonder how this got approved by the Institutional Review Board, the Ethics Review Board. All right, so people went around a college campus approaching people and just, hey, how you doing? And they offered them, let's see, there are different versions of this. Okay, so this one here, they approached and offered a date, all right? There have been versions where they offered a one-night stand too. And I'm always like, how did you get that one approved? So women in college were approached, about half were willing to go on a date, only a few agreed to go back to the man's apartment, and none agreed to sex. All right, for men, half agreed to the date, 2/3 agreed to go back to the woman's apartment, and 3 and 4 agreed to have casual sex. All right, so you have a difference there. I always wonder what the debriefing was like in that one. You know, like, okay, so you're not actually going to get to have sex. This is part of a study. Can we get consent to use your data about how willing you were to have a fake sexual, to agree to a sexual encounter that didn't really happen? I always wonder about that. They didn't address that much. How did the debriefing go? All right, so not surprisingly, men were more up for a casual sexual encounter with someone that they just met, that they did not know. And all right, and then we mentioned different types of investment, and in a previous video. Now we also have the idea of parental investment. All right, the amount of time, effort, and physical resources needed to produce genetic offspring. There's a certain amount of parental investment. How is this relevant? Well, it's different for men versus women, or males versus females, more accurately. All right, so women have high parental investment costs. Just think about it. The man, he has to give sperm. It is entirely possible for him to be done at that point. The female, they now have to carry the pregnancy. Then the baby is born. They have to care for the baby. They have to protect the baby, feed the baby. And so since women have high parental investment costs, this might lead them to be more selective. Like, hey, this casual hookup can lead to parenthood, a long-term investment and commitment for me. I don't want to give that to just anybody, So women are more likely to make sure that it's somebody that they can trust, somebody that they would trust to actually stick around and take care of any offspring that might result, things like that. And so men have very low investment costs, no consequences, so they can be promiscuous because having an orgasm does not mean that they have to raise a baby, basically. Or I say raise a baby, raise a child into adulthood if they survive that long. All right. All right. One last video in this series, and it's going to be about some difference with same-sex relationships.